Yeah, Jim Bob on form today. Has 2 wins against Vampirus and takes game 1 against Twodback as well. We've seen Twodback play very well in these games before. He's known as a very good 4-player FFA player and also a very good series player. Welcome to game number 2 of this 1v1 tournament semi-final, casuals tournament semi-final between Jim Bob and Twodback. Jim Bob took game number 1, a close-fought game with 2 power robots. And once again, joining me for this broadcast is Phil Athanic.
Hi.
What do you make of what we see here?
Well, there will be no scavengers. There's only 1 carbon, and as we learned yesterday, dry ice scavenger will not work in 1v1s. Most of the iron is over here on the left side of the map in this big patch. There are a couple of spread out iron patches over here. The problem is the water. Well, okay, I guess there's some water down south of that iron patch, so that's not a terrible find. You have pretty much access to everything you could want over there.
Yeah, and there's a southeast patch as well. I mean, there are blocks of iron that are kind of a little bit awkward, but definitely usable. And neither plane deciding that they want to go. And yeah, Jim Bob does decide that the robot down in the southeast is what he wants to go for. Twodback going instead for the expansive, which is kind of interesting, and immediately taking those 2 iron and buying up as much steel as he can possibly afford. He's going to be in a single steel mill, and he almost has the aluminum that he needs to upgrade. But Jim Bob, with that robot, is going to be off to a much faster start, and we'll see if he can make any headway at HQ2 to his opponent's HQ1.
Twodback did decide better of going into double iron mines instead, 2 steel mills.
Seems completely reasonable.
I suppose the increase in the steel price was mostly from Twodback buying it up, though. I guess Jim Bob's upgrade did contribute to that rise in price too.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly needs steel more than he needs iron at this point, and he's going to be sustainable, at least for the time being. I'm a little bit worried about a power surge coming onto this iron, which would completely destroy Twodback's early game. But again, no black market cooldown for Jim Bob for a while, so he's probably going to be safe, at least until he gets to HQ2.
Yeah, Twodback just needs another 10 steel to come in online. He has the iron to produce that 10 steel. He should be able to get to the upgrade without too much trouble any minute now. Jim Bob moving into a bunch, all of his HQ 2 claims have been away from his base, moving into some aluminum, moving into a water pump, moving into another high steel.
Yeah, the second high iron tile is kind of interesting because he is going to be able to claim or to hook that up to. Oh, hang on, is there a cliff? There's a cliff there, so he's not going to be able to hook that up to his base. That makes it a little bit more difficult. Although he's got the one adjacent, so he can rotate that if he needs to. Going into the dry ice, which is interesting. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of this. Carbon very cheap right now.
Carbon very cheap.
Not going to be making a lot of and oxygen too. I think I might have preferred to see maybe some food coming down or something like that.
Food coming
with
down.
That tile, but I imagine he's prepping wind turbines. But again, that is it's going to be a while till he can get those up. He needs to upgrade first. And as I say that, he actually was at the upgrade, so he gets there and gets that steel bought up after selling it down, so is going to be able to go into those wind turbines, I imagine, quite soon. In fact, he's going into a geo instead. This is kind of interesting.
Twodback is already on a very early HQ2 geo, struggling to put down 2 farms. Originally had those as mines, deciding that aluminum at 11 actually doesn't make enough money, and going to chase the food market, which does seem sensible.
Oh, the mutiny. The mutiny. Jim Bob has a mutiny for that geo, and it does get gooned, so he will have seen the goon purchased. So
now it's a defensive mutiny.
Buying. Yep, I mean, it's totally fine. It's totally fine now. I think he was going to mutiny the geo, but saw the goon purchased, assumed from Twodback that that's where it would be. So completely fair enough not to follow through on that. And yeah, he is going into at least 1, and I imagine probably 2 wind turbines, which are going to be pretty valuable for him. He's not got a black market cooldown for a while, so he can't protect them, at least for the time being, but certainly they're going to be very good. Power now up above $200.
Yes, Twodback still needs another, what is it, 13k, 10k to actually upgrade
It's a lot.
He is going into a remote steel mill, which I find intriguing. That's
sure about this.
That's what I'll use to describe it. Intriguing. This claim is going pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit.
Twodback.
I mean, I guess because the power is controlled, at least for the time being, as far as Twodback's concerned. He's got the Geo. He's not really going to be worrying about running a power deficit for a long time. So power feels like it's going to be okay for the time being.
Straight into some third farm. Just going to start earning food money to power his way to the upgrade HQ3. Jim Bob right now, not making that much money. 5K in the bank, just up to 6. He's making some off of, well, the carbon that he purchased to put the wind turbines up, and some of water.
Yep, fair enough. Getting that money back that he put into the wind turbines. The adrenaline boost on the Geo is pretty sensible for Twodback. He's going to be paying through a bunch of that debt, and probably preventing Jim Bob from doing anything about this power market. A third wind turbine looks like a little bit of an overcommitment from Jim Bob, to be completely honest. He is going to goon, I think, the middle one. He does, and so he's got that protected, at least for the time being, but it's going to be difficult for either player to make any real power money. Twodback and Jim Bob between them are crashing this power price to the extent that probably it's going to be able to pay off most of their debt, if not all of their debt, but not really any more than that on power. So we might not see anyone get into an HQ3 lead.
Twodback is going into...
As I say that, there's a shortage there.
Yeah, well, Soren says otherwise. Twodback just went into 3 water pumps, which seems like a drastic overcommitment, especially considering it's a high, medium, and a low. He went into 1 electrolysis reactor when glass is actually pretty high and oxygen is pretty low. I'd much rather see him move into glass at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the water does feel like an overcommitment, doesn't it? Life support price is not very high, and both players are now in life support. Jim Bob has the 2 farms, so he's going to be making money, at least in the short term, from that food, but in the long term, it's not going to be profitable. So that water, those 3 remote water claims, even for an expansive player, that's a lot of remote water claims. Something else that's an overcommitment from Twodback, that's definitely an overcommitment from Twodback, are these 3 geothermal plants. I think the 1 honestly was enough.
Oh,
3
wow.
geotherms.
Why?
That is too many.
Okay, but you can still cancel this 37% and return it because the power price is dead.
Yeah, and power price isn't going to be coming back with those geos either. They are just going to be wasted claims, and it's going to be dead for the rest of the game if those 2 geos stay up.
Does have a cash...
Oh, he does.
Okay,
he does.
Good.
He cancels at least one of them. I would cancel the second.
Yeah, I would probably cancel the second one too, but he's not going to. It's a suboptimal move. I don't think it's the end of the world. What he does need to do is move into some aluminum somewhere. Aluminum, well, as I say that, there's an aluminum surplus.
The black market is
Soren's just playing with us today. He's in the low mine just next to him, so he does have 1 per second coming in, and yeah, he's going to take advantage of that surplus to buy a bunch of it, and he's actually got the HQ4 upgrade if he wants to, ahead of the robot.
Yeah, Jim Bob, like I mentioned earlier, he's just been struggling.
Well, he's out of steel. He's out of steel. And that's going to be difficult for Jim Bob, because the steel cost now for his upgrade is 24,000. And yeah, he realizes exactly what's up, takes away that solar condenser, and goes into that steel mill.
Honestly, those wind turbines should
he's going into 3. He's going into 4. That's a lot. He bought a claim to put down yet another steel mill. So he realizes that that's what he needed to do, and en masse decides to go into that steel.
Alright, Twodback is finally moving into glass. I'd like to see in 10 seconds Twodback buy the power surge and just right here on all these steel. Well, they got turned auto off
because Jim Bob bought into that short, and did he just give Twodback a bunch of money with that? He might not have. I didn't quite see.
Sure, but anyway, Twodback does do the freeze. Power surge right on the steel, as I was hoping. Jim Bob's steel is going to be offline for a long time. Only operating off of one steel mill.
These wind turbines need to be something else at this point. Its power's at $2. It's going to stay at $2 for as long as those wind turbines are up. And Twodback running a small power surplus. Jim Bob though running at 2.4 per second, which is far too much. 2.6 per second. Does have the upgrade though, so Twodback with a cash lead, but Jim Bob has caught up now in HQs. But just level with the scavenger or level with an expansive player as a robot isn't really where you want to be. You want to be ahead of that.
Lagging is never good. The power price making a slight uptick to 3 a second, but if Jim Bob keeps these wind turbines up, this dust storm will just completely kill it.
Yeah, and he's gotten rid of one of them, and again another surge coming down on Twodback. That's such an efficient surge at this point. Steel making a lot of money, $100 per tile for that steel, and he desperately needs it to build stuff at HQ4 and to eventually upgrade to HQ5. Here's a spy auction, which is kind of interesting, and again, fairly valuable.
The only way this power surge could have been better is if he waited for Jim Bob to commit all of his claims and all of his buildings, because the surge was still going from, I think the majority of the other surge was still happening for those buildings. So right now Jim Bob could just cancel his solar condenser, which he doesn't do, move into 2 steel mills over on this side, and be not in a good spot, but be okay.
He needs that steel so desperately. He's got 1 steel mill active right now, and here is the dust storm. And again, that solar condenser not doing really anything at all with that dust storm, other than boosting the adjacent chem refinery with that carbon production, which isn't nothing, but still, you'd rather that probably be a chem refinery by itself. Although again, Jim Bob doesn't have the carbon to make this sustainable right now, and with this dust storm going on, isn't going to have it for a while. Twodback, big cash lead. The freeze finally comes down onto Twodback stuff, and he does hit that HQ5 and an expansive at HQ5. It was a completely safe upgrade, and gets all of those extra claims for his trouble. So Twodback looking like he might be in a very strong position in this game. Jim Bob is running out of ways to catch up here. And,
I would have been tempted, honestly, to try and go for the kill if I was in Twodback's position. I mean, the upgrade is the safer play.
I mean, the issue with that is that it's actually very hard for Twodback to make any money, or certainly with the claims he had, it's very hard for him to make any money, because life supports, which he'd heavily committed into, and which honestly had put him into this lead a little bit, kind of died. Life support really quite dead now, even those reactors not making a whole lot of money, and he heavily overcommitted into water. He's got a big surplus now as well, although he can turn some of those into dry ice solar condensers if he wants to, and with carbon at $110, that might be quite attractive. Jim Bob, though, in those chems, and they're going to be making very good money, and he's got the carbon now to support them. He's got a whole bunch of solar condensers with that very high carbon price.
Twodback is in 3 chems himself. Jim Bob buying up into steel, network virusing Twodback's steel mills.
He thought perhaps there might be... Oh, never mind. He's actually making a play with iron here. This is very good from Jim Bob. He is getting a lot of value from this network virus, not only checking for holograms, but also making Twodback spend so much money on that iron. He doesn't have a stockpile, and those steel mills are losing 150 a second now, and they will be for at least the next 20 seconds, and in some cases for longer.
Well, what this does do is it forces Twodback to make the transition from his remote steel mill into iron. That should, with the adjacency bonus, give him the extra 2 iron per second that he needs. So it'll be about, what, 15 seconds, 20 seconds before he's okay?
It will be there eventually, but until then, he's going to just be leaking so much money on that iron. And you can see his cash and resources not really going up right now. In fact, it might even be going down. Oh, the mutiny on the metal mine as well. So Jim Bob really going all in on this iron play. Twodback quite frustrated, because this is a lot of money that Jim Bob is able to burn of Twodback's. This is really good play. It's got him right back into the game. He's got a big cash lead now. He might even be able to start thinking about the kill.
Yeah, if he does, he needs to be thinking about it right now because this network virus is slowly starting to wear off. The mills are turning themselves auto off. Instead, they're arguing in chat about the mutinies. Less arguing, more playing. Twodback should be able to defend himself. However, off of that play, Jim Bob up in HQ 5 with more cash on hand. Although Twodback does have that cash tied up in defending himself.
So we have a game here, folks. We have a game number 2. Jim Bob coming right back into this one. It was looking for a long time like Twodback had a pretty much unassailable lead, certainly in the late game. But instead, Twodback really struggling to get that steel, and or rather to get that iron for the steel. And Jim Bob punishing him in the most severe way that he possibly could have. Twodback responding by going into a patent lab. I wonder what we're going to see from him. Has he got many remote claims? It might even be something like teleportation with the low chem price. That's not too costly for him right now.
Teleportation would be a good pickup. We haven't looked at Offworld prices yet. They're actually pretty decent launches.
Oh, they're good.
So thinking machines might be what I would prioritize over teleportation. Twodback also moving into a hacker array.
Hacker array as well. So
it does go for thinking machines.
Getting those advanced buildings going. And yeah, this thinking machines is going to be very good. Particularly for Twodback, because again, this launch, 550 for food. And that is a sustainable launch because he's got all of this water production. He's got all of this food production. So the food very shortly indeed going to be very profitable. And that is an EMP, or a power surge rather, that hurts a lot onto Jim Bob with those reactors and those solar condensers. Not enormously profitable, but again, Twodback just protecting his markets. He is a very interesting option.
An underground nuke, how much do you value this at this point in the game? All players have put down their claims, so I'm honestly not sure what price it should be.
Let it go for 18.
And both players are not sure. They're thinking very hard about this auction. Somewhere in this 18 to 24k range does seem like the upper end for this nuke.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting choice. That's a very interesting choice. On the silicon, I was completely expecting the water, but silicon is what it is instead. Jim Bob, I guess, does have some water and hasn't been producing life support for a while.
Bob,
so
fortunately, has 555 silicon stored up in the bank. He's not too bothered about that nuke right now.
Nope, he's not at all. Twodback going for the chem surplus rather, which is kind of interesting. Jim Bob does have a stockpile of chems, but he can very easily sell out, and he's not producing chems right now either, so maybe just trying to control that market, thinking that Jim Bob could potentially make profits from the chem market in the future with the low fuel price and with carbon production that he has. So trying to shut that down preemptively, perhaps. Jim Bob in his own hacker array, though. I wonder what he's going to do with that. And now Twodback going into that food short.
The hacker array is finished. Time to change our passwords.
Power surge onto the electronics factory. Thinking machines has come through now.
And so perhaps more importantly, the patent lab.
Yep. So only shut down for 40 seconds or so instead of the much longer time that it would have been shut out for. It's getting very finely poised right now. Jim Bob with a slight cat lead.
Jim Bob sold out of all his chems and just bought right back in. I'm not sure whether he actually made money off of that or lost money.
I imagine he got some free chems, as it were, with that that short. Here is
the first Offworld under construction.
And no great surprise, has that thinking machines. It's pretty cheap if you're an expansive player, and he's an expansive player. So in terms of the amount of steel that he paid for that, not a huge amount. And honestly, it's very difficult for Jim Bob to respond to this with anything convincing, at least.
Yeah, Jim Bob does have the short-term cash advantage, but once this Offworld starts launching at 52k profit a launch on oxygen, Twodback is going to catch up very quickly. Jim Bob's still sitting on one claim that he hasn't used this entirety of HQ5.
Yeah, okay. So I wonder if he's waiting and see. I mean, he's got so much silicon, and that, I mean, the longer this game goes, the more I feel that underground nuke on the silicon was a fairly major error from Twodback. Yeah, I wonder what he's thinking about doing with that last claim.
Jim Bob does move into a Offworld market of his own. That Offworld market cost him somewhere around 150k, I would assume, not accounting for the jump in steel. Twodback, very bold, adrenaline boosting his hologram gooned Offworld. Jim Bob has to know that there's something there, but he doesn't exactly know what it is. Probably suspects an Offworld.
Yep, I would imagine that he suspects an Offworld, and Jim Bob now in his own Offworld. There was an extremely suspicious set of spikes on the little spark lines for the resources there. A big steel spike and an electronics and glass spike as well. So Twodback, I imagine, suspects at the very least that his opponent is into an Offworld market. It is not protected by anything right now, so we'll see.
Not protected by anything right now, but no way of knowing that it's protected. Not protected, because there are no spies and no network viruses.
Well, the one spy that he got in the auction was placed on the other side of the base, and Jim Bob just dodging that particular bullet.
Although it does give Twodback the ability to look at what Jim Bob is hacking.
The black market is open for business.
Hacking food. Is Jim Bob hacking food up? That seems interesting. Twodback has food production, or at least he did have food production. Now he's going back into food production because he sees the food hack. And yeah, that's pretty significant. Jim Bob also going into a bunch of food.
Twodback.
I'm actually really surprised that Twodback rotated away from those farms, because it is the launch, or it was the launch. It's certainly the highest gross launch on the Offworld screen, $640 for those food launches.
Twodback is going into a out in the open Offworld market. It is gooned, but is not hologrammed. Twodback is confident with his thinking machines that Jim Bob will hesitate from attacking. Both players have about the same amount of cash on hand, but once this Offworld comes in for Twodback, goes online, 57k profit launches on oxygen.
Yep, pretty good, and Twodback has a lot of oxygen, so he can launch that for a few minutes at least. Again, another adrenaline boost comes through on the Offworld, and I wonder
Jim Bob responds with an adrenaline boost on his own Offworld. Twodback buying into Jim Bob, buying into himself, just trying to push this game as long as possible, which he should have the advantage as an expansive. Jim Bob's still sitting on this one claim that he hasn't used. I think he's forgotten about it.
I think he's forgotten about it as well. He should have used it by now, certainly. So he wasn't holding it for anything. He just didn't realize that he had that extra claim. And yeah, Twodback with a big advantage at this point, has the stock advantage. No cash advantage right now, but does have that second Offworld operational. Jim Bob not really in a position where he can go into that second Offworld at all. It's very, very expensive for him to do so right now. 140,000 for that Offworld. He does not have that amount of money right now.
No, it is looking like Twodback will be able to take this series into game number 3. There's only one little problem that Twodback has right now, and he is burning up a lot of money on fuel, 130 in the second.
Yeah, those chems are dying in a hurry, aren't they?
They
not
are
very profitable anymore.
Another boost on Offworld, and Twodback does spot. Where did that land?
It landed on the Offworld. I mean, I'm sure that he at least suspects and probably has entirely deduced that that is where the Offworld is. Well, because that's the second boost now from Jim Bob.
Now, perfectly fine with that mutiny on the Offworld bouncing, as if Jim Bob does take over one of his off-worlds with a mutiny, he has thinking machines. Twodback can simply take back Jim Bob's off-world himself and keep it for double.
Yep, that's fair enough. But having said that, it's still annoying for Jim Bob to have to deal with, and maybe a power surge comes down. That would be pretty devastating onto that off-world, which still is unprotected, and yeah, he buys another goon for it. I imagine that's where it'll go, yeah, it does. So Twodback, instead of being aggressive, deciding that his original plan is the best
Boosting
one.
off-worlds. Hard to argue with
again.
that too much when launches are still 49, now 45k a launch. Twodback is 71% of the way to the buy, still needs, what, 490k, 450, about 140k until he can take Jim Bob. Jim Bob, on the other hand, is 300k behind.
Twodback with the... he is now in all of those electrolysis reactors, and he did just short fuel, but then sold out of it. Interesting. So he's not going to benefit from the short at all. And yeah, the goon does bounce, but Twodback had already bought another one to go straight back on there.
Mutiny, that is. I mean, goon squad, that is. He does have the mutiny. If he was paying attention, he'll realize that Jim Bob's off-world is defended once again, but will he elect to... Well, doesn't matter because he has 100% on Twodback.
Yeah,
this got a lot of cash in a really short amount of time. Probably just waiting for these off-world launches to finish.
I think because of the fuel that he had, Jim Bob bought into a bunch of fuel for that short, and that did push Twodback momentarily over the line. He's not there just yet, though. This launch might get him very close.
Yes, there's the red button. Twodback ties the series, taking game 2 in a rather long Soul 10 1v1, using all of the expansive extra claims to his advantage. Jim Bob was struggling earlier, but off of a nice network virus and buying an iron, brought himself right back into this game and made it interesting up until the end.
Yeah, that definitely put him back in the game, but it was just too big a lead, wasn't it? It was too many late game advantages for Twodback. Had the expansive with all of those extra claims, had of the water production. He was actually leaking water at the end because he was producing so much carbon and oxygen from those solar condensers. But even so, able to get it done, got himself thinking machines, got himself those 2 off-worlds, and able to ride that pretty easily in the end to game number 2. Although Jim Bob, as you said, with that network virus, that put him right back into the game, and certainly it was the most stylish way that he could have got himself back into the game at that point. But to no avail, unfortunately. And Twodback gets game number 2. We're tied at 1.